What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages? Joker back again, once again. So I'm gonna do something a little dangerous, and by dangerous I mean engage full spin foil, because let me tell ya, you're gonna need it. So I wasn't originally gonna talk about the vertical slice of story that people got to play at E3. Obviously, because, well, 1, I didn't get to play it, 2, I haven't gotten to see it, and 3, because, reasons? And for the most part, I won't be talking about it, so you don't have to worry about spoilers. But I did want to talk about this.
The mission starts with a small blurb telling you that there is a breakout in the prison and that Cayde 6 has been invited by Petra to help contain it. That Cayde 6 has been invited by Petra to help contain it.
Now this is something we've all heard before, unless you've been on a complete and utter media blackout, which, in that case, why are you watching this video? Anyways, on the face of it, it just seems like such a throwaway line, a call to adventure. Petra calls Cayde, Cayde calls us, we meet up in the Reef to contain a riot, only it's not a riot, it's a prison break, shit goes down, and spoiler alert, Aldrin kills Cayde. Shocking, I know, right? Except, that entire scenario doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So, grab some spin foil, relax, maybe grab a drink, some popcorn, maybe those little cheese doodle things on crackers. Yeah. Anyways, get comfortable, because this is gonna be a long one. So, like I said, there's a lot about this scenario that just doesn't make a lot of sense. First, why call Cayde? Actually, why invite Cayde? Because an invitation is completely different than a cry for help or a distress signal. And we're gonna keep coming back to this question, this idea that Cayde was invited to the Prison of Elders. It wasn't Zavala, it wasn't Ikora, it wasn't Guardians in general, it wasn't us. We only went there because Cayde asked us to come. Another detail that will be relevant, because when you think about it, over the course of Destiny 1, House of Wolves, Taken King, it wasn't Cayde, it wasn't the Vanguard that the Awoken went to for help. It was us. We're the one that created those diplomatic ties. We're the one the Queen called upon to take out Skolas. It was Petra who came to us during the Taken War and the events after the Taken King. So we already have this working relationship with Petra and the Awoken of the Reef. We've also killed the Heart of the Black Garden, we killed Atheon, we killed Crota, we killed Oryx, we killed Gaul, we killed Panopsis, we killed Nokris, we killed Zol, and a couple dozen strike bosses whose names escape me at the moment. Point being, the player character is the single most powerful entity in the universe of Destiny, and everybody knows it. Now, we know from the web lore that Cayde has been filling the Prison of Elders with bounties for Petra, but for something this big, for this huge prison riot, 1, you'd think you'd want as many people as you could get, and 2, you'd think you'd want the biggest gun you have available in your arsenal. And by biggest gun, I mean us. Which, remember, we weren't the ones invited to the Prison of Elders. Cayde was. The only reason we're involved whatsoever is because Cayde came to us and asked us to go with him. And why does Cayde ask us to go with him?
He brings you along as the guardian that he trusts the most. Past the blurb, we're thrown into the action and immediately we have to fight waves of enemies from the Hive, Fallen, and Cabal, and they're clearly fighting amongst themselves, and it isn't clear how they got their weapons, which Cayde 6 makes commentary on. This could be just one of those because video games moments, or it could be something that fits into the further lore of the prison break where the weapons were returned to the prisoners.
And there's an interesting point to be made about that Cayde brings us along because we're the guardian that he trusts the most. And to kind of even delve into that a little more, in a letter that Cayde writes to his long-dead son Ace, he says, "Here's the skinny, Ace. Never trust the Awoken, the Reef type. The ones back on Earth, they're okay. But if you ever find yourself washed up in the Reef, keep your distance. They play by a whole other set of rules. Like, they want to be untrusted. And whatever you do, don't stare into their eyes. And going forward, remember that part about the Awoken playing by their own set of rules. That will be extremely relevant. But it's also worth noting that even after House of Wolves, even after the Taken War, even after everything that the city and the Reef has been through together, Cayde still has this feeling of distrust for the Awoken. Again, keep that in mind as well because it'll be relevant for the entirety of this video. The second part of this scenario that makes absolutely no sense to me is, why is Uldren breaking anyone out of the Prison of Elders? That may seem like an odd question to ask on the face of it, but the last time we heard anything about Petra or Uldren was in the Curse of Osiris. It was on the Telesto lore tab, and at that time they were working together. In fact, the tab reads, Contingency reserves overdrawn. We underestimated nobility troth reparations. Aldrin suggests that we open reintegration talks. Have you discussed endowment support? So there seems to be a clear line of communication, of trust, advisory, the last time we hear anything about these characters, and the first time we hear about these characters in Destiny 2. So how do two people who have a long, drawn-out history of working together go from working together to basically all-out war? One of the things you'll often hear about actors or thespians is they'll ask about their motivation. What is my character's motivation? What does their character want? What are they trying to achieve? Now, motivations don't need to be complex. They just need to make sense for the character, the actions of the character, and the universe that the character lives in. Now, let's go ahead and reestablish what we know about the beginning of Forsaken. But let's give a little backstory and context to some of the characters, namely Petra and Uldren, and see if we can't figure out motivation and what's going on. From the outside looking in, Uldren, who was working with Petra last time we read about them, has decided to one day attack the Prison of Elders and conduct a jailbreak. Wait, what? That absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. Why would Aldrin attack the Prison of Elders? 1, he's the Prince of the Awoken. 2, if that title doesn't matter, he's the spy master for the former queen, and he has a long-time working relationship with the current regent of the Reef, Petra Venge. 3, he has a long-time working relationship with the current regent of the Reef. If Aldrin wanted something from the Prison of Elders, why not just ask Petra for it? I mean, they've worked together for years. She clearly trusts his judgment, like the queen trusted his judgment. I highly doubt Uldren would get denied any request he made of Petra. Now, a little backstory on Prince Uldren, at least Prince Uldren in the time between taking King and Forsaken, where he puts a bullet between the lovable rogue Cayde 6's eyes. See, before all of this, after taking King, he was last seen besting the Kell of House Kings in single combat. This was, of course, after crash landing on Mars. And this, of course, was after the Awoken fleet was destroyed during their assault on the Dreadnought. After exiting his ship on Mars, Uldren was greeted by little spy bots called Crows, who he promptly informs are going to help him find something that has been lost. Presumably the Queen of the Awoken, who somehow managed to survive this.
You and I know how this ends. We've known since you escaped from that pit. The Awoken have played their part. This was all part of the plan. Guide them, my hidden friend. It is all up to you now.
And we know she's alive because Uldren has this twin bro Lannister telepathic spider sense link that allows him to sense his sister, which he does twice. Plus, the developers told us she wasn't dead, so there is that. Fast forward to Destiny 2, Curse of Osiris, and he's working with Petra. Fast forward a little further to Forsaken, and now he's attacking the Awoken, breaking people out of the Prison of Elders? That just comes off as senseless. Something feels off. 2 and 2 are not equaling 4 here. Another piece of this puzzle is Petra. Petra worshipped the ground the queen walked on. In fact, the lore states, after Amethyst was raised, the loss of my sisters, my whole life, as our station burned, it took something from me. By your will, it was given back to me. So the queen gave Petra her revenge, her purpose. She gave her back her life. So then why was Petra later exiled by the queen? Well, Petra tells us herself in a letter to the queen stating, "My lady, I offer again the only explanation I can. I did not know the Guardians would act as they did. All I had ever known, were the ways of the Awoken. The wolves were entrenched in that valley. The approaches were blocked. All lines of sight covered. An assault on their position was madness. We would have spent precious awoken lives for nothing. I saw the Guardians, knew they were on the move, but I assumed they saw the situation as we did, that it was folly to call in the crows. Prince Uldren's fighter wing did a masterful job. The blast was pinpoint precise. The blast tore apart the wolves, and the Guardians, and their ghosts. 3 strike teams of Guardians gone, in an instant, on my order. The city's anger, the speaker's condemnation, all earned, all fair. For Petra's revenge against Velkis, the Forgotten Kell, and her pride, and for her queen, Petra ordered the deaths of 9 Guardians. This also shows another instance of Petra and Aldrin working in tandem. In fact, in the Aftermath card, one of Aldrin's first thoughts were of Petra. He thought of Petra, how overwhelmed she must be, forced to hold her post, and watch her people perish. So there doesn't seem to be a lot of animosity between Petra and Aldrin, which makes Aldrin attacking the Awoken even more nonsensical. Which brings us once again back to our initial question. When things really started popping off in the Prison of Elders, why was it Cayde Petra invited, not us, not anyone else, not an entire legion of Guardians, just Cayde? Something feels off.
It's a trap!
Kinda like everything Cayde's been involved in with the Prison of Elders and the Reef since the Red War was a carefully crafted trap. He didn't trust the Awoken, yet he had no problem filling the prison before. However, suddenly, there's a prison riot, Petra invites Cayde out to help, and Cayde comes to us. The only one he thinks he can trust to help him. Which I don't entirely think is true, but if it was a trap and Cayde sensed it was a trap, and we both died, that would really be no problem, life goes on. If the entire Vanguard died, then the city is plunged into chaos as the ruling body is suddenly wiped out. Plus, I mean, we have half a dozen god kills now, so unless the plot is dictating that you're going to die, we're a pretty great insurance policy. But we can't stop the plot. We're not plot-proof, or at least the people around us are not plot-proof. And on that same note, Petra has historically done whatever she needs to do in order to accomplish a mission, even if it means killing Guardians. Remember, the Awoken play by their own set of rules. It's why Cayde didn't trust them. But once again, we run into another issue. The nagging question that has been haunting us the entire video. Why? If we work under the premise that Cayde was lured into a trap set by Aldrin and Petra to be killed, then we have to ask ourselves, why? Because on the face of it, no one's actions make any sense here unless it's a trap. Not Aldrin's, not Petra's, not Cayde's, especially not Cayde's. But why would they set up an elaborate trap to kill the Hunter Vanguard? An action that would essentially put them at war with the city. The 2 main theories that I've seen proposed are that A, Cayde was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and B, Aldrin killed Cayde for revenge. That he was willing to risk war with the city, in fact he wants war with the city because of the death of his sister. Except none of those theories really make all that much sense when you start looking at the events and the lore taking place around these events. Aldrin's quest for revenge because the Queen died in a war that she didn't need to fight doesn't make sense. Oryx was coming to kill us all. Not just the city, not just the Traveler. That's what Oryx does. He ends civilizations. Everybody knew the score. Everybody knew what was going on. The Queen understood that our Guardian was important to the war to come. Like the intro to Taken King states.
We fought to keep our beautiful creation safe. And now this beast has come, claiming to be king. Marasav bows to no one. You and I know how this ends. We've known since you escaped from that pit. The Awoken have played their part. This was all part of the plan. Guide them, my hidden friend. It is all up to you now.
And this is further elaborated on by what Eris has to say at the end of Taken King.
My queen, you were right. The Guardian was the key. For the first time, the whispers are silent. It is done. have accepted my fate. I will not fail.
Aldrin was the Queen's spymaster. He was part of the Queen's plan, the tip of the spear. In retrospect, he thought that the Queen shouldn't have been that close to the battle, or that there was something else they could have done, but he didn't blame the city. He blamed the Techians, the Origin Libraries, Oryx's weapon itself, but not the city. Again, this was a battle that needed to be fought. There was no other choice. The Awoken had a part to play, and it was all part of the plan according to the Queen. A plan that I would have a hard time believing Aldrin didn't know about. Also, there's the small detail that Aldrin doesn't think the Queen is dead. Missing, but not dead. On top of all of that, the city can field the most powerful weapon ever devised. Us, the Guardian. We've killed gods. It would be suicidal for Aldrin to move against the city. He would have nothing to gain. He would not be able to take his revenge. He would die a painful death screaming. So revenge against the city for the death of the Queen just doesn't add up at all. And basically the same goes for Cayde being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It just doesn't make any sense. And there's too many unanswered questions for that to be the case. So if revenge against the city for the death of the Queen, who isn't dead and Uldren knows she isn't dead, doesn't add up, then what does? If hypothetically Petra and Uldren set all of this up just to kill Cayde, the issue then becomes motive. Uldren crashes on Mars and goes right to building an army. Now, at this time, he says, speaking to one of the crows, "Something has gone missing, and you will help me find it." It's after this that he goes on a quest to build an army. He allows himself to be captured by the House of Kings, and then defeats their Kell in single combat, taking over the house. It was then assumed that the reason that we see all the houses under one banner in Destiny 2 is because Uldren took the House of Kings, went to the other houses, conquered them, and integrated them all into one house, essentially becoming the Kell of Kells. So, before Destiny 2, Uldren was clearly already up to something. And as we've established, a war with the city doesn't make that much sense. More so given the time frame. This army seems to be created to aid Uldren in finding something, likely his sister, not seeking vengeance for her death, which, at the time of building this army, he doesn't believe her to be dead. And if she's dead, why would you need an entire army to find somebody whose body should be in this rubble? Unless it's not, and he already knows it wouldn't be. So, where's the Queen? Could it be something as stupid simple as she's in fact dead and Uldren, in his denial, formed an army, then sometime between the Curse of Osiris and Forsaken decided, no, his sister actually is dead, and it's the city's fault, so he's going to kill them. He's going to kill them all and kill anybody who gets in his way, even if that means going to war with the Awoken. Perhaps, but Uldren seems to be smarter than that, and it really doesn't explain anyone else's actions. Currently, there are two competing theories that I've been throwing around in my head. One that states the Queen is the emissary of the Nine and is being held prisoner. I won't go into the full details about that because I've already made a 14-minute video about it, but because every video is somebody's first, I'll go ahead and get into the gist of the theory, and why it makes the most sense. The Queen seems to have control over power nobody else does. For example, in the Coven Grimoire card, it states, "The amulet around her neck marked Ilian as the Coven's mother, granting her visions beyond the veil, places only the Queen could go." If beyond the veil was someplace that the Queen could go on a whim, either physically or mentally, then surviving this it all starts to make a lot more sense, and so does Aldrin being able to mentally reach out to her, and so does her being lost. This ability seems to be something only the Queen can do, unless she grants the power to somebody else. Perhaps this ability was gifted to her by the Nine? They seem to have a working relationship that is damaged when Uldren's crows go snooping around Rhea, the second largest moon of Saturn and the 9th largest moon in the solar system. And no, the symbolism is not lost on me. So for those of you who don't know, Uldren's crows went snooping around Rhea. The Nine got mad, demanded that Uldren be sent to them. Instead, the Queen sent them Skolas, and a bit of a veiled threat, saying, "The crows are mine." The Nine then free Skolas, give him a ship, and tell him anything he needs, simply ask. And then we have the House of Wolves DLC. It's my conclusion then that the Nine were going to have their prisoner one way or another. The Queen, in sending Skolas, slighted them, So, when she slipped into the Veil, either physically or mentally, the Nine imprisoned her, and she's been serving as the emissary ever since. Again, there's more to it than just that. I made a 14-minute video, which will be linked in the description below, but those are the bullet points. The other possibility is that the Queen was reincarnated as this random-looking hunter character. Granted, that's a super speculative theory with no real backing. It's just based on looking at the character and the character's design and a dash of, well, wouldn't this be cool if? And, you know, the white glowing crow. Because symbolism! It's one thing to be awoken. It's one thing to be an awoken with white hair. It's one thing to be an awoken with white hair using the Feud Unfading shader that you get from Varix in Destiny 1, which, for the record, is the shader that my Titan uses. But it is a completely different thing to be an awoken with white hair with some association to the Reef and then have a white crow. More so when the only characters in the game that are associated with crows are from the Reef. To say that my artist sense is tingling is an understatement. Granted, it's all still speculation, but if the symbolism was any more obvious, it would be beating you over the head with a baseball bat. However, in the course of puzzling this out for you, I did come up with another theory. See, the emissary theory just works way too well, and the puzzle pieces just kind of all fit together. The emissary talks about sensing her brother.
I can hear you clearly. My brother is too distant.
We know that Aldrin and the Queen can sense one another. We know that the Queen is alive and somehow survived the assault on the Dreadnought, and that she could go places beyond the Veil, which seems to be some sort of power. Oddly enough, it sounds a lot like a throne world. Ilya needed an amulet to see into this Veil world, and we needed a crystal charged with ascendant energy to enter a throne world. Just saying, kinda sounds similar. We also know that the Nine wanted Prince Uldren. We know that the Queen slighted the Nine by giving them Skolas. A captured Kel is not a prince, and we know the Nine weren't happy about it. We also know that souls and minds can be separated from bodies. Look at the Hive. When a Hive god or a significantly powerful Hive has their body destroyed, their soul retreats to a throne world. Look at Toland. Hell, look at the Guardians. A Guardian's consciousness exists independent of their body, as their body can be disintegrated, but they still retain all their memories. So the mind or the soul or the spirit existing separate from the body isn't something new to Destiny, and the emissary seems to have an ever-present being within the Third Spire. The Third Spire being a structure of unknown origin and location whose location text reads, "You have no idea where it is, but somehow you know exactly how to get there." And it seems to be a dimensional pocket or has within it a dimensional pocket. Kind of almost exactly like a throne world, or at least too close not to mention. So it is within this framework and the rules of the Destiny universe that I propose it is completely and utterly possible for the emissary of the Nine and this random looking hunter awoken, who might actually be Orin from the Trials of the Nine weapon lore tabs, to both simultaneously be the Queen of the Awoken, Marazov. So within the context of the Destiny universe, it is not beyond the realm of possibility that the Queen's soul escaped this Veil realm, and her body was destroyed and later resurrected by a ghost. In fact, it's so possible within the realm of Destiny that as a plot twist, it's almost boring. And honestly, it could have been part of the plan.
This was all part of the plan.
As apparently, just as long as somebody has light, they can become a guardian. And any ghost, just as long as they're not owned, can do it. See Jaren Ward and Shin Malfur for examples. So, just as long as the Queen had light, and they had a ghost on standby with no owner, the Queen could have come back as a guardian, or at least the Queen's body could have come back as a guardian. And perhaps the plan was that if anything went south, they would have the Queen turned into a guardian, and then her mind would be reunited with her body after the fact. But, like with all best laid plans, something went wrong. Terribly, terribly wrong. They didn't count on the Nine interfering. So if the Nine have imprisoned the mind of the Queen, Uldren and potentially even Petra's motives start to make more sense. Why would any of them jump headlong into a war with the city? That's suicidal. We've killed gods. Lots of gods. We kill gods for fun now. It's just on the weekend. That's just what we do. And you can't say Uldren blames us for the death of the Queen. She made that call. He was a part of it. Orcs would have killed Earth and the Awoken and everybody. This was an all-hands-on-deck war. Plus, Uldren doesn't believe that the Queen is dead, just missing. So a revenge plot against the city doesn't make that much sense narratively or logistically speaking, like I've pointed out a couple times now. The Nine like to test us. Again, look at Skolas and the House of Wolves, look at the Trials of the Nine, and we all know that there's something coming, just like with Oryx, and they want us to be ready. It makes vastly more sense that the Nine went to Uldren, or Uldren found the Nine, or found Zur, and they proposed a bargain. Our head for the Queen. And they gave Uldren the power and the abilities that he needed to create the Scorn and attempt to carry out this mission. The prison break at the beginning of Forsaken is a trap created to lure Cayde out and kill him, sending us after the kill of our friend and mentor, deep into territory that Uldren would have an advantage, the Reef and the Dreaming City. Which also sounds like it's the name of a throne world, but I digress before I become the guy who thinks everything's a throne world. The cruel joke in all of this, however, is that Uldren will die screaming. The Nine will see that our mettle is once again tested and that we're ready for the wars to come. And who knows what'll happen to Mara Zov. There would be an ironic poetry, like I said in my last video, to this random guardian hunter looking awoken, killing Uldren for killing Cayde. Only for Uldren to die knowing that his sister, or a part of his sister, resurrected as a guardian, who had no clue about the connection between her and the man she just killed. Only that he killed Cayde. And if we were to add another level of morbidity to that poetry, and say that the Nine make good on their hypothetical deal to win or lose, free the Queen, then we potentially have a tragedy. One where the consciousness of this random queen-looking awoken hunter is erased and replaced with Mara Zov's, who now realizes that she killed her brother and has to live with that. And with that, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages, we now have a story that comes full circle and gives characters motivations that actually make complete and utter sense, while also explaining the source of things like new powers. I mean, really, where else would Aldrin have gotten the ability to raise the dead? As apparently the Scorn are undead fallen. And it would be far from surprising if the Nine were the ones who gave us our 9 new supers. So what do you think? Have I convinced you that Aldrin is merely acting to get his sister back from the Nine? That any betrayal dealt by him or Petra is potentially justifiable? I mean, how far would you go for somebody that you loved? What are some of your theories? Why do you think Aldrin would be stupid enough to kill a member of the Vanguard? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and like always, stay frosty.